everyone, it's Shar and welcome back to my channel, or welcome if you are new here. You know, today I was feeling the vibes of just like chilling in my pajamas with messy hair. Like, you know what? Let's relax. Let's have this be super cozy and comfortable. So if you haven't already, put on your pajamas or your loungewear, grab yourself a nice warm drink, and let's do an October wrap up. If you are new to my channel, something I like to do for my wrap ups is just go over my stats. I think it's interesting and fun to look at. I have a few things that I look at when I go over my wrap up. So let's jump on into it. So for the month of October, I read 16 books for a total of 3,787 pages, averaging to 121 pages per day. So from the 16 books that I read, 3 were from authors that were repeat authors for me, and 13 were from new authors to me. That number is slightly skewed because I did read one author and then immediately read the next book in the series. In terms of the formatting for the books that I read this month, I read one book via mixed media, so I was listening to the audiobook and reading the book on my phone. I listened to 2 audiobooks, 8 ebooks, and 5 physical books. In terms of where I got the books from, I read 7 from KU, that's Kindle Unlimited. I read 5 physically. 5 of the books that I read were books that I owned, which is great. Love reading off of my physical TBR. 2 of the books that I read were library books. 1 I read from Audible Plus, and 1 I read from Scribd. So I'm happy to see that I pulled books from every area in my life, and happy to see that I'm utilizing my subscriptions, reading off of my physical TBR, and also taking advantage of my library. Of the 16 books, I gave 0 books 5 stars, which was disappointing, but I had a lot of 4.5 stars, which was great. I gave 7 books 4 stars. I gave 8 books 3 stars, and I gave 1 book 2 stars. We'll talk about that. The most popular book that I read this month, in terms of the one with the most number of reviews, was The Thursday Murder Club. Again, we'll talk about that. And the least popular book that I read this month was Holden's Mate, which is book 1 in a Dragon's Mate series that just has the least reviews, and I did enjoy that. Okay, and that wraps up the stats for this portion of the video. Let's go in and talk about the books. I figured that for this video and this wrap up, I want to break it down a little bit differently. Normally, I would go through and tell you about the books that I read in the order that I read them, but for this video, I'm gonna do it in sections. 1, to make it easier for me, but 2, to make it easier for you in case there's a genre that you love or you feel that we have the most similar taste in, then you can skip ahead to that section of the video and see what I read in those genres and what I thought of those books. But let's jump into the books that I read this month, starting with manga. So the 2 mangas I read were actually part of the same series. I read Spy Family by Tetsuya Endo. I really love Spy Family. So Spy Family is a story about a spy who is on an undercover mission to kind of bring peace in his city. There is this other kind of rival gang leader type thing who has a lot of power and is doing a lot of corrupt shit. And in order to infiltrate that, our main character needs to go undercover, adopt the child, get a family, and then put that child into the same school as this other guy's family so he can have peace in the country. Now, the thing that's fun is that he ends up adopting a little girl who's actually telepathic and knows that he's on a mission, and then he marries a woman, like a marriage of convenience thing. They both know that it's not a real marriage, but neither of them knows what the other actually does, who's actually an assassin. So it is a super cute and funny story. I really did enjoy Spy Family Volume 1. I thought that was such a fun time, and it's such a quick read. I think I read that in less than 2 hours. The art style is really, really incredible. Like, I love the art style of it. I think the family is so cute. Like, Anya has my whole heart. She's adorable. Later on in the month, I continued with Spy Family Volume 2. Again, super quick read, but I didn't enjoy this as much as the first one, just because I felt like it was a little bit all over the place and that we jumped from scene to scene to scene pretty quickly in ways that was sometimes hard to follow for me, even though I had a really good time with it. And Volume 2 does focus more on the family dynamics and them trying to come together. I ultimately felt like It was just a good time for me. I gave it 4 stars. It was fine, but I'm not sure I will continue with the series just because I don't ultimately feel super invested in it. Moving on to mysteries and thrillers. I started the month off with the Thursday Murder Club. I did read this for a reading vlog, which I'll have linked somewhere in the video. I wanted to love the Thursday Murder Club because I do love murder mysteries, and the whole premise of following a group of elderly people at a retirement village trying to solve a murder sounds really, really fun. But I shared all of my thoughts in this reading vlog, so I won't go too in depth, but I will tell you that I ultimately gave this book like 2.5 stars. So this is my 2-star book. I really did not like the writing. I felt like it was really difficult to follow. We had a million different points of view that honestly made no difference to the story or the plot. The plot was also really hard to follow because I wasn't exactly sure what the hell was going on. We had deaths, but the way that it was written just made it confusing. I saw this in a Goodreads review, and I 100% agree that because the point of view shifts so quickly and the chapters are so short, like a page or 2, it's hard to follow along with, and it feels like you're just flicking through channels and getting bits and pieces of a story that ultimately feels like it's not making sense. In addition, while we had so many points of view, all of these characters had the exact same voice. Like, I could not distinguish between the character. I could only do that by what they were talking about. I did have some characters in here that I did love, but ultimately I really disliked this book a lot. And I will be continuing with the series, mostly because I'm hoping that listening to the audiobook will make a difference in how much I enjoyed it. This was the most popular book for my October reading month, but it was the book that I enjoyed the least. Then I read A Curious Beginning by Deanna Raybourn, again for this same reading vlog. This was another disappointment. I'm so sorry to say that. Just like Thursday Murder Club, I went into this wanting to love it. I thought that I would love it, but while it had really fantastic banter, and I do kind of like where it went in the end, the pacing felt off and that it felt very, very slow. We had this whole section in the middle of the book that was like 6 chapters or something like that, like a very long section of the book that ultimately had absolutely nothing to do with the plot and made no difference. It was really just a chance for our characters, Veronica and Stoker, to interact with each other. While Veronica and Stoker had great banter, it ultimately was not enough for me to give this book more than 3 stars. Moving on to Gallows Hill, a book that was actually on my October TBR, which is a win for me as a mood reader. I actually read off of the TBR I set for this month. I enjoyed Gallows Hill, but it was kind of boring. I am so sorry, besties, but it's true. I was looking forward to it. I really love Darcy Coates. This is her newest book. But with Gallows Hill, the issue that I had with it was that we have a ton of just like dialogue and description, and that's just interspersed with like maybe 6 or 7 like super scary scenes, and even then it just felt bogged down by details. In that, I want to make sure that you know I'm not being rude when I say this. It's just my opinion. In that, you can write your book however you want. It felt overwritten for what it was. I know that with KU, authors get paid by the page count, and unfortunately this book fell into the trap for me where it felt like the book was long just to make some extra coin. I don't think that's true at all, but that's how it felt to me reading this book. So that was a 3-star read for me. I then moved on to my Weekend Ween books. So the book that I read for Weekend Ween was Dead and Breakfast, and this fulfilled the prompt of listen to a spooky audiobook. So Dead and Breakfast follows Liza and Melanie. Liza is Melanie's grandmother, and she raised Melanie. They just moved to this town because they went in on an investment of this beautiful house in this very touristy area that they're turning into a bed and breakfast called the Merry Ghost Inn. They end up, as they're doing renovations, finding a literal skeleton in the closet, and that sparks a murder investigation, and they are not allowed to open the bed and breakfast. Because this is a cozy mystery, there is just one detective in this small town, and of course he gets called away to something else. Liza and Melanie decide that they want some adventure in their life and they're going to solve this murder mystery themselves. The crimes felt realistic. The way people are involved in these crimes felt very unrealistic, obviously because of the cozy mystery theme. Now, I did enjoy this book. It was just not something that I necessarily felt was for me. In the end, our villain ended up feeling like they had no motivation for doing what they did, and it was just kind of like disappeared. Great, fun, spooky times. So I did enjoy that. It was another 3-star read for me, but not something that I think I will remember, and for sure not the best murder mystery that I've read, but I'm cutting it some slack because it's a cozy murder mystery, so therefore I know that it follows different beats than a classic murder mystery, and I should set my expectations accordingly. And then the final book that I read, also for Weekend Ween in this genre of mystery and horror, is a horror book. This is If You See Her by Nia Alborn. Now, this book is fucking terrifying. I've already explained in the Weekend Ween vlog why I think this book is so scary and who I think this book is for. This book follows 3 characters. We have Casey, Jesse, and Reed. They are best friends as teenagers in the early 2000s until they go to this super haunted house in their town of Warsaw, Michigan, and Reed takes his own life. 20 years in the future, we are following Casey and Jesse. And Casey comes to Jesse's house acting very, very strange and insisting that they have to go back to the farmhouse where their best friend took his own life because they're about to bulldoze that farmhouse and Casey wants closure. Jesse reluctantly agrees to this, and of course, shit hits the fan and goes wrong because this is a haunted house possession story. I absolutely loved this book. I gave it 4 to 4.5 stars. I'm still settling on the rating. It's somewhere within that range. It still stays in the 4-star category. What I will say about this is that what I found so unsettling was the slow nature of this possession and how it slowly took over Jesse's mind and what that led to for him and the repercussions in his life and the impact on his mental health. For us as the reader, we suspect that there are some strong paranormal possession elements, but what the author does really masterfully is keep us in Jesse's head, in that we, like Jesse, are questioning if what's going on is actually going on, or if it's a result of him dealing with his feelings of grief and guilt, or if he is struggling with his mental health. It was a really fun time. It was also a super spooky time. It is very slow paced, so if you don't like slow books, this is not going to be for you. But if you like a slow, creepy, eerie, haunted house possession story, I definitely encourage you to pick this book up. It was something that I had a fantastic time with, and it is on KU. KU sometimes has an audible narration accompanying the Kindle Unlimited book, which is what this book was and how I was able to listen to it mixed media. And that brings us beautifully into the category of monster/paranormal romances. My home, because I love that genre, especially in the month of October. I read about 6 books in this genre, and we're going to start with Holden's Mate. Holden's Mate is a book about a dragon shifter and his 3 brethren. They lived on this world where dragon shifters were the norm. That's what populates the world, but a disease or something takes out most of the population. The queen gives birth to a bunch of dragon eggs, and a wizard comes and whisks the eggs and these 4 dragons away as a favor to them because they would not survive on that planet. They are now trying to find their home here on Earth. Holden is one of the 4 men, and all 4 of these men decided that what they need to do is settle on Earth, find mates so that their little dragon babies, they each took one, can have families. And Holden ends up running into a woman who is a psychic who was recently divorced, very recently, yesterday recently, and we follow them and their journey of falling in love. This was only 70 something pages, so it was really short. I gave it 3 stars. The writing was great, but the pacing once again fell off because the characters barely spent any time interacting with each other, and then when they did, it felt super rushed. Part of that is the nature of it being a novella, but I've seen and read novellas that are able to do that, and I don't think this book quite accomplished it, in that by the time they had sex, literally one time, that girl was like, I love you. Girl, you just got divorced yesterday. What the hell do you mean? No, you don't love him. You don't even know him. You literally do not even know him. It was enjoyable for what it was, not ultimately memorable, and there were some things in there that made me uncomfortable and just how I've read them. Like Holden talks about women on dating apps and I'm just like, bro, stop with the man with the podcast energy. And then I don't even know his mate's name. The girl, the psychic, has a line where she's talking about like she wants to be back in the dating market, and if she's gonna do that, she needs to lose weight to do that. I think, ew, the fat phobia, not for me. Then I read Blood Moon by Gillian Graves. I actually completely forgot that Gillian Graves was coming out with another book. As you all know, I read Titan in the summer and I really enjoyed Titan, so I was excited to pick up Blood Moon. Blood Moons follow a vampire named Vlad and a witch named Hazel. Hazel owns like this pub spot for the strange. In this world, any creature or like mystical being is called the strange in this world, and she owns a spot for them. Vlad has the same dream, but he owns a massive nightclub called the Black Door across the street, and they are rivals because Hazel believes that Vlad is sabotaging her because of his club's aggressive marketing, and Vlad is like, yo, it's not what you think. So this is almost purely smut. Like, they spend a lot of time fucking. From the very first scene, Vlad walks in on her taking a shower and she has just taken a potion that makes her horny as hell. So they promptly fuck in the shower. This was a super steamy book and I really enjoyed the sex scenes in it. It was a lot of fun. There are definitely some kinks in there. I'll bring this up in a later video for like recommendations that I'm doing. But if you want a steamy, good time with a vampire and a witch that's a little bit cheeky, doesn't take itself too seriously, and it's just like a comforting book, I'm definitely going to recommend this to you. It's not the most like outstanding blow your mind book, but it's a fun time if you're looking for a monster romance. Plus Hazel is a plus size character and that's always great to see. Then I read Jack. I had such a visceral reaction to Jack. Jack is a story, again, we are following a witch. She performs a ritual because she's like, it's Halloween and you know what I want? Some dick. So she performs a ritual and summons the devil, and surprise, the devil has a jack-o'-lantern head. They do a lot of fucking all over her shop, and my bro, he tastes like pumpkin spice. Yeah, I was chill, you know? I was like, okay, we're just gonna go with it because it was just erotica. Like, that's what I was there for. I had such a reaction to the ending, and I'm going to insert the sound here so you can see it because it's just me reading like, oh, he tastes like pumpkin spice. I hope that doesn't come up again. And then, okay, if it floats your boat, it floats your boat, and good for you. I'm so happy to hear that. But when it went in that direction, when my girl was literally milking him and selling his cum as pumpkin spice syrup, I was like, you did that for what though? For what? Again, if that is for you, I'm not here to kink shame you. If you like milking, then you're going to like this book. And if you don't like milking, be warned. That is at the end of this book. Moving on to another book in a similar vein around heads and headlessness, I guess. We have Riding the Headless Horseman. We are in Sleepy Hollow, New York, following yet another witch who is actually a witch. She has magical powers and she doesn't believe in death. She doesn't believe in the Headless Horseman, but of course she lives in Sleepy Hollow and everyone does. And she's like, y'all are full of shit. The Headless Horseman isn't real. And stupidly, she goes on a midnight walk in the park on Halloween. Stupidly, not because her worst fear is a headless horseman, because who the fuck goes on a walk alone at midnight in the park? Anyway, the headless horseman somehow is able to hear her without a head and snatches her up and drags her to his cave in the underworld and proceeds to have lots of sexy times with her. He doesn't have a head, so you can imagine what those sex scenes looked like. He just had a body. And I was like, how are you even able to talk? He's talking about smelling her. I'm like, how? You don't have a head. It's just brought up in the book as definitely jokes in it. I did enjoy this. There is some like BDSM stuff. The thing I didn't like at all, like full warning, he makes her call him master. Blech. That word, like I cannot. I cannot. Like, I was not into that at all. And then mild spoilers here. So skip ahead to the next book. I will have it timestamped if you don't want to hear it. But mild spoiler. My dude does not have a head. But he tells her the story of how he became the Headless Horseman. And my girl goes and secures his head and is able to give him back. And it ends with him essentially saying, "Thank goodness, now I can eat your pussy." Yeah. Anyway, it was like a 3-star book. Did I tell you what Jack was? I think it was also 3-star. We have a lot of 3-star books in this category. What was not a 3-star book was Luxuria, which I am so happy to say. I read this book from my Goodreads Chooses My TBR video, which I had so much fun with and was so surprised by how many great recommendations that I got. Luxuria follows our main character, Ophelia. I think her name is something like that. I hope it's Ophelia. I think it's Ophelia. She used to be part of this hunter community, but Ophelia never believed that she should be hunting monsters and instead that she should be fucking monsters. So she drew a lot of monster erotic art, and the hunters were not into that, and her parents were not into that. And being the assholes that they were, they kicked her ass out and she was forced to live on her own. We are several years in the future. She is now an adult and the hunters have come back to her and they say, "Hey, listen, we have this Shadow King who wants to make a deal with us so we can have peace agreements between our people, but he needs a bride and no one else will marry him. You like monsters, so you should marry him." And she's like, "Thank God, fuck this world, I'm out, I'm gonna go get me some monster cock." So she goes and marries the Shadow King, and yes, they do have sex with his shadows. I love this. I don't know what it says about me that I did love this, but I did love it. I actually felt like it was a very well-developed world. There were a lot of fantasy elements in it. If you're just looking for like smut, there definitely is sex in this book, and like very explicit sex in this book. Lots and lots of sex scenes, but there's also plot. So if you're not looking for plot, this is not going to be for you. The plot was really fantastic in that things are not what we think that they are. And there are so many layers to what's going on in this shadow realm. The realm that they live in and that Ophelia and her husband rule over is so interesting, and how their magic works and what they need to eat and kind of like the history of them between the hunters. I just thought was really fantastic. This is a book that I could not put down. I really enjoyed it. And with that said, it was a 4-star book and not a 5-star book. It just didn't give me a 5-star feeling. And I reserve my 5-star books for the books that have a 5-star feeling. I wish it could give you a more detailed reason as to why this wasn't a 5-star book. It just wasn't for me, but it was a really, really great time and I loved it. And in that same Goodreads reading vlog, we have Found by the Lake Monster by Lillian Lark. This is exactly what it sounds like. Have you ever seen Kim Possible? Do you know when that dude in the Halloween episodes goes swimming in the toxic lake at the camp and then he comes out and he's like part fish? That's what this monster is in this book. So we are following our main female character. Gosh darn, y'all know I am bad at remembering names. I don't remember her name. But she is bored, much like Ophelia in Luxuria. She really likes monster fucking. She has a fantasy of a monster fucking her, but in this world, monsters don't exist, or so she believes. So she decides to go out with a team of ghost hunters for shits and giggles to go to the forest because it's going to be more entertaining than her sitting at home and reading monster romances and masturbating, according to her. So she goes out and she immediately regrets it because my girl is scared of the forest and she gets immediately lost. She runs into this lake monster who thinks that she is someone else because Mr. Lake Monster is in heat and he has a blind date with a witch and they're supposed to figure out if they're compatible. He thinks that she's the witch. My girl is like, this opportunity has presented itself and I'm not stupid, so I'm not turning it down. Let's go fuck. She goes to his cabin and he is in heat, so there's a lot of banging. They do a lot of fucking. It was weird. It was weird. I can't even tell you that I enjoyed the sex scenes because I didn't. My dude apparently is able to like reproduce with himself, but needs someone to carry his eggs and his, you know, opens and has a stem where he loosens her so that he can insert his stem into her cervix and plant the egg directly in her uterus. If you can't tell by my facial expressions, that's how I felt about that. But it was still a 3-star book. I had a good time while I was reading it. It was just not necessarily fully my thing. And that wraps up beautifully our monster and paranormal romance section. Let's talk about the romances that I read that involved no monsters. So I read 2 just general romance books, starting with Hospitable. I really enjoyed this. This is a sapphic romance, best friends, sibling, kind of age gap, taboo situation. It's not a massive age gap, but we are following 2 characters. So we have Kiki and we have Charlie. Now, Charlie is Kiki's best friend's little sister, and he is very protective over Charlie, but Charlie has just gotten an internship in this new town, and Kiki offers to host her while she is completing her internship so she doesn't have to worry about trying to pay off her rent. She doesn't think anything of it. She's thinking, I'm doing my best friend's little sister a favor. Charlie, however, is like, this is my chance to fuck Kiki, because she has always been into Kiki. She's always thought that Kiki was super sexy. And now that Charlie is in her early 20s, this is her final year of college, I think, she decides that she's going to go for it. So she sets about seducing Kiki. This is a short novella that I listened to on audiobook and I really enjoyed. It really is about them kind of coming together. And what I liked is the maturity of this, because it doesn't fall into like any miscommunication tropes. There are clear lines of communications, clear boundaries, and set expectations for what's going on. If there's any miscommunication that happens, it's quickly resolved, and I enjoyed that. There is some BDSM here. There's exploration of BDSM and Kiki perhaps being a dom and Charlie wanting to be a sub and how they go about doing that. I really enjoyed it. I thought that it was super steamy and a great time. And the final book is Love on the Brain by Ali Hazelwood. I have not been hearing great things about this, but you know what? I was pleasantly surprised. I was worried that Marie Curie would be brought up too many times. I was worried that we would constantly hear about how giant this man is. I was worried about a lot of things. And you know what? It barely came up in the book. Do I wish that we would stop with this giant man, teeny tiny, super petite girl? Yeah, but it was still a fun time. I've heard a lot of people say that this was really similar to the Love Hypothesis. I think that there are some overlaps with it, but for me, it was different enough and our characters felt different enough that I still really enjoyed it. We still have a little bit of grumpy sunshine going on. I liked the plot and the setting overall, with it being at NASA. I didn't even tell you what this book is about. On the Brain follows Bee and Levi, who are kind of arch nemesis in their professional worlds. Bee believes that Levi absolutely hates her, and Levi's actually completely in love with Bee. So they end up working together as co-leads on a project for these helmets for astronauts at NASA, and chaos ensues. I really did enjoy this book a lot. It was definitely one of my favorite books that I've read this month. I gave it 4.5 stars. As always, the writing with Ali Hazelwood was really great. The sex scenes, surprisingly, were not as cringe as with the Love Hypothesis. I actually thought that they were pretty solid, and I just had a good time with it. And Levi and Bee's like banter and interactions were so cute. I love the whole drama going on at NASA. I even liked some of the like science that was incorporated into it, and the idea of merging engineering and like neuroscience together was really fun and intriguing to me. So I did really enjoy that book. I gave it 4.5 stars. Again, we don't always need to have like a super tiny heroine and a ridiculously large man. We don't need to always do that, but it was still a really fun time for what it was. And that concludes it. Those are all of the 16 books that I read this October. I was thankfully right in my prediction that I would be able to read more in the month of October because it would be less chaotic for me. I really had so much fun with all of the books that I read. I hope that you were able to get some recommendations. Let me tell you, my favorite book of this month was Love on the Brain. Surprised no one.
Oops.
Oh, bitch! No, you're not gonna call me no bitch.
Thank you so much for watching this video. Let me know if you read any of these books in the comments below, because I would love to know what you read in the month of October or what your favorite book was in the month of October. If you aren't already, please do make sure to subscribe before you head on out, and I will see you in my next video. Bye!